Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. I did a video recently. I mean, if you're watching this, it was like yesterday, but or the day before, something like that. But if this is the year, 2756, it was centuries ago, where I talked about the return of the piano virtuoso / composer. Pianists who write music and perform music, chamber music, solo music, orchestral music, and write it for themselves and their friends, and they make wonderful music, and it's a great thing. It's a wonderful trend. And so I thought I would do a little bit of a list, a small list, 12 noteworthy pianist composers, some of whom you may know well, some of whom you may not know well, but who definitely deserve a shout out. And they're worth experiencing because it's a whole niche of the musical universe that kind of got neglected as the 19th century wore on. And, virtuosi stopped writing music for themselves to take on tour and started playing music by other people. And we can understand that because most virtuosi were not in and of themselves great composers. In fact, most of them were lousy composers. And so they found that it was more rewarding, probably for them, as well as for audiences, to play the music by the great composers that had been written for them or for their colleagues, and to give up composing altogether and to specialize merely in concertizing. But, it doesn't matter whether they were good composers or bad composers. What matters is that they composed, and the great ones will be remembered. The lousy ones won't be. It's really pretty straightforward, I think. That's how it shakes down. So I'm going through this list because all of these people actually were 20th century composers. So there's something going on there, and it's been going on more, I think, as the century wore on. I could be wrong. I could be just cherry picking because, you have to be able to do a lot of digging to do a complete survey on a topic like this. And I haven't dug, I confess. I'm going by what the discography shows me, what I see in front of me, but I'm hoping that that's true. And it seems like when I look at recordings that have been released over the past few decades, there's more of that than there used to be. So let's get going, shall we? Because in addition to living composers, of which there are quite a few here, pianist composers, there is the rediscovery of earlier generations of pianist composers. And that is an exciting thing too. So it's a combination of the two. First, Ernst von Dohnányi, or Erno von Dohnányi, the great Hungarian composer who wound up spending the rest of his life in Florida, actually. He was the grandfather of the conductor, Christoph von Dohnányi. His son, who was Christoph von Dohnányi's father, was killed as a result of his being captured and convicted in a plot to assassinate Hitler, which is frankly a great way to go. I mean, if you're going to go and die early or die young, it was in a good cause. Anyway, he was a tremendous pianist, revered as a pianist and as a musician of really deep and searching sensibilities. He made very few recordings, and a couple of them are on Testament, including some of his Beethoven sonatas and things like that. And they're well worth hearing, in addition to his own music, of course. So he's an extraordinary artist whose name does not deserve to be obliterated. Next, Nikolai Medtner. Now, a lot of you people have said to me, why don't you talk more about Medtner? Well, it's because nobody cares about Medtner particularly, except for the people who do care about Medtner, and they care very, very deeply. Medtner has been described as Rachmaninoff without the tunes. And that's actually a pretty valid description. He's a bit like Busoni in the sense that his music tends to be elegiac. He writes forgotten melodies, and it's all sort of in a somewhat gloomy, backward-looking, almost decadent philosophical ambiance. But he was a very good composer. And his music is lovely. I mean, it takes some getting used to because he doesn't have the melodic facility of someone like Rachmaninoff, but it's there. That's the point. And it's worth hearing. It's for sure worth hearing. His piano sonatas are beautiful. His piano concerti are beautiful. Marc-André Hamelin has made amazing recordings of his work, as have several other pianists as well, especially on independent labels. And Yevgeny Sudbin's done some on BIS. It's worth getting to know. I'm telling you, his fairy tales and other things, they're dreamy, and they're kind of special. They really are. He's almost, maybe I said Busoni, but also maybe Delius is someone to think about, in the sense that he's a composer with a very special atmosphere, a limited range. Let's face it, a limited range, but within it he was a master, and he was a fabulous pianist and a wonderful composer. So he's definitely worth getting to know. I'm putting in the plug that the Medtnerites have asked me to do, and I'm happy to do it. Then, of course, there's Rachmaninoff, who needs no introduction. I mean, he was an amazing pianist and an amazing composer, and he played his own concerti and recorded them all, and recorded a lot of music by other people, Schumann and Chopin and the great Russians, and his own stuff, and it's all been out on RCA forever. So I don't need to go into it in any more detail there, but he's got to be on the list, of course, because he was always, almost a rebirth of the virtuoso pianist composer at the beginning of the 20th century. And so you might say he was at the beginning of the trend. I don't know why I listed him third here. Well, it's not really a chronological list. In fact, it isn't. So I wouldn't worry about it. Next, Stephen Huff. Well, we just talked about his piano concerto and other solo works that were released on Hyperion. And he's written string quartets and chamber works and other things. He's a very talented composer. He really is. And a very talented pianist. And it's great. It's just great. Just go explore. I mean, I'm just giving you the list. The piano concerto I was charmed by. It's 20 minutes of wonderful writing for piano and orchestra with some lovely tunes and excellent ideas, colorfully presented. And his partita, which was also on the same disc, is a neoclassical bonbon. One of you mentioned, and I think correctly, that he was influenced by Mompu, who's one of his favorite composers. He has, who he performs with two of his song and dance things that are in the partita, and it's just good music. Good music by a gifted pianist, composer guy. So there you go. Olli Mustonen. Olli Mustonen is a character. I always say that. He's got a quick-witted sense of humor. He's like a little pixie or something like that. There's something elfish about his music and about him as a performer. He brings humor where there is humor, which I just think is such a valuable thing. I'm like in his Diabelli variation recording on RCA. It was so full of wit. And like so many people play it like it's a punishment. I enjoy him. I enjoy his work. It tends to be a little eccentric, but he is also a composer. There's a disc of his works out on Undine, and they are delightful, almost Poulencian and French in their sort of confectionery qualities. But he's somebody to look out for, and another just superb musician, really first class. Stewart Goodyear. Stewart Goodyear is the Canadian pianist, is a remarkable artist. He did that fabulous transcription of the complete Nutcracker, which he recorded. It was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And he's written some really, really impressive chamber music and other things, both for his instrument and for other forces. Another pianist composer who's worth looking out for, and who cares, who takes the music seriously. I mean, he has a gift, and I look forward to hearing more of his own individual music as well as his recordings of other music. He just did a slammin' Prokofiev second piano concerto, so with Andrew Litton. So yeah, I mean, the guy can play, the guy can write. Oh, isn't that exciting? Isn't that wonderful? And of course, we have Frederic Rzewski, who is one of the great composers for the piano in the second half of the 20th century. An avant-garde composer in some respects. His work, The People United Will Never Be Defeated, the theme and variations, is one of the great cycles of piano variations. It's right up there with the Bach Goldbergs and Beethoven's Diabellis. It really is. And he lived to record most of his major works. His American ballads are just dazzling. He was a very, very imaginative and creative guy. He spent most of his career in Europe because there was a place there for composers of a left-wing bent, which is what he was. And when I listen to his music, I distance myself from the political, and happily he was able to basically do the same, irrespective of the title and the inspiration. He was a wonderful musician, and his music, I think, survives its political leanings quite well. And he's well known. I mean, he's well known, and deservedly so. A great, gifted pianist composer. Marc-André Hamelin. Whoa, yeah, of course. Good old Marc-André Hamelin, who does wonderful things whenever he touches, is really good, just about. Whatever he decides to do. I mean, he's written wonderful piano music for himself. He does cadenzas and other people's music that are exciting as hell. He plays all kinds of unusual repertoire, like Medtner, for example, and Alcan, and he does it dazzlingly, and he's just a miracle of musical creativity. And his own discs on Hyperion are delicious. He's a guy who you look forward to. In fact, I think I have right here a new disc of his stuff that I haven't heard yet. I know I have it here somewhere. I got to find it. It's here. He put out some new stuff of his. Oh, gosh, where did I... Is this it? Let me see. If I'm lucky. No, that's not it. Oh, well, never mind. It's here. It's in a pile. It's in one of these piles. So, yes, I mean, I look forward to hearing whatever he does. I have to find whatever he does. Oh, dear. It'll turn up. And in the meantime, just go listen to him. He's great. Nikolai Kapustin. He was like the big discovery of the past 20 years. He passed away rather recently. He was the Russian jazz guy. I mean, he didn't write jazz. He insisted it was not jazz because it was fully notated and had no improvisation in it, but it was jazz in its harmonies, in the way that he approached writing music. And his works are stunning and atrociously difficult technically. And there are a couple of dozen piano sonatas and 6 or 7 or 8 concertos and all kinds of other interesting things for various forces. He was an extremely well-organized composer, so you can go and look at his work list and see exactly what there is. He's been a big deal, a really big deal, and rightly so. I mean, the fact that he could play this stuff is amazing in and of itself, but his music is finding a wider and wider audience and more uptake by other pianists, and he definitely deserves as much attention as we can give him. And last but not least, Lera Auerbach. Another wonderful pianist composer, and she's the real deal. She's written beautiful works for violin and piano for her friends and colleagues to perform, and she does them extremely well. She comes out of the Russian school, kind of Shostakovich and those people. Her music is sometimes challenging, but always rewarding, deeply felt, attractive, imaginative. It's got all that stuff going for it. And she produces music at regular intervals, and I always look forward to hearing her recordings, especially the ones in which she's a performer as well. But she doesn't have to be, because music stands on its own 2 legs very, very effectively. So there you have it, my friends. 12 really cool pianist composers. Really good pianist composers, people who deserve attention and people whose work is ongoing. And so we can look forward to new things and enjoy new things, which is a rarity in the world of classical music, isn't it? I'm very, very excited to be participating in the process by which music becomes classical. We hear it, we judge it, history judges it. Time will tell where it winds up, but we know that we're enjoying the work of some really, really thrilling and adventurous living musicians and rediscovering some powerful pieces by some almost forgotten names. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.